All right, we're live. Welcome to the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast. I am your host, Chris Kirkwood, screen name Kirk D's, here with my two boys, Killer B 2482, Brett Hartfiel, and the number one ranked Canadian DFS player in all of Canada, Tyler Tamboline, toe tag and Tambo. What's going on, fellas? I'm in a good mood this week. I hope you guys are as well. But how you doing?
Week 4 for me was pretty break even. Lost some on the main Sunday slate, but couldn't believe all the action that I ended up getting for the 2-game Monday Night Football slate. So ended up making back basically what I lost on all my Sunday action on Monday. So it's ridiculous the amount of like just even heads up that I got on DraftKings. With that 2-gamer. So I'm kind of excited. Again,
it reminded me of like Peter Orviz's thing. Like, this guy took my head to head, like that video that he does with anyway, sorry.
No, but I'm kind of excited that we lose 2 games on this main slate. So we go from 12 to 10. But we get the double Monday Night Football game again. So I can't complain. 10 games is enough for me. Tambo, how was your week?
It was solid. It was actually one of my better weeks in a while. I made $2 on Sunday on DraftKings, so that was solid profit. Literally won. No, I made $2 profit. It wasn't the winnings like all the screenshot jokes, but that was good. I'm with you on these 2-game slates, so I don't mind them. I know the circumstances aren't ideal, but yeah, I had a really good slate there. A bunch of Robert Tonyan, so I actually made money on that slate. And it was one-off here and there, and even on Sunday Night Football the day before. Chop and I do the premium show every week, and him and I were all in on Kittle, and not that was anything sneaky, but the rest of the plays we had were pretty good, and I was one off there. So something's coming. I'm not doing as well as our boy Kirkwood. He's a humble guy. I think he's not talking about his big wins, but he had an incredible week. Proud to see that. That was awesome, man.
Oh, no, I was going to talk about it. Don't you better believe I was going to talk about it.
Yeah, I was loving watching that. I know in the slant where you got second, you could tell the story in a minute, but I got 26th. I was right behind you there with a little bit of a galaxy brain mistake in running back. So I just missed you there, but it was nice to see somebody I know up top, and glad to get back on the show with you again for this week.
Yeah. So let's recap my week. So Sunday, I was miserable. I was so bad. My girl hated me. Everything was awful. I was just getting crushed. I just had the absolute worst lineup on Yahoo. I just made a really stupid bonehead switch. And I had the most action I had in a long time there. So I thought I was like lost a lot of money. So I didn't really pay. I did max enter the slant on DK. And I think my cash team was doing all right too. I don't even remember. But anyway, so that I had that one lineup that was like finally got serious, when Dak went off. I was actually watching a Stafford lineup that was doing really well with the same plays, but then all of a sudden that was like out of it, and like this Dak lineup of mine shot up. And then it got serious, and then I was in first. And then I was holding first for like a long time, until Darren Waller's last catch. But the worst part of it was that that I would have been a runaway winner for if Will Fuller's touchdown didn't get reversed. My lineup was fire. It was Dak with Amari Cooper, brought it back with Odell. Then it had Mixon and Ronald Jones, which were the keys. Yep. Cooper was in the flex, so I had a wide receiver in the flex, and then I had correlation with Thielen and Fuller from the same game. They both went off, and then I had Bengals D with Mixon. So it was like correlation perfect, this lineup, and it just happened to go nuts. And the sick thing is it would have been winning the Millie all that time. The guy who beat me in the slant on that last catch also won the Millie. And I didn't enter the Millie, so I gave up $150,000 by not entering it because I've been trying to work on my MME skills. So it was kind of bittersweet in that scenario, but it was awesome. I mean, it was lucky. So it bailed me out big time. So we're gonna press it. We're gonna press it this week.
Keep it going forward, baby.
We're gonna press it all in this week. All right, so we got 10 games here. We've got some interesting ones. So we lost the Titans. We lost the Pats to COVID situations. It was looking like we were going to potentially lose the Jets, but I guess it was a false positive. So the guy I heavily touted and, I had a ton of and lost a lot with last week, Kyler Murray. We'll get into that, whether we like him again, but that was a complete whiff on me last week. But, right at the top, we got a 56-point game total with the Chiefs at home against the Raiders. Chiefs are favored by 11. I have never seen a team total this high that I can remember. 34 implied open. I mean, I don't remember seeing one this high ever. So that's crazy to me. But from there, then we have the Falcons Panthers is probably going to be pretty juicy. That over-unders, both of these teams give up just tons of fantasy production. Their defense, the Falcons defense is just atrocious. Carolina's been okay. They certainly played well. I expect them to be a lot worse last week against the Cardinals, but they give up production everywhere. Houston, we get the dimple chin is gone. The firing of crater face Bill O'Brien. And they're at home now at 54-point total. I mean, that was a long time coming. Houston is 5.5-point favorites against the Jags. So that's interesting. That's a high total. A lot of people are going to, don't know what to expect. I'm not treating it much different, but, maybe there's a little extra fire in this Houston team. After a coach's firing, that usually wakes people up. And Jacksonville is a defense that Joe Mixon just absolutely shredded last weekend. But was a team that we were usually going with the pass, but maybe there's some pieces there with like Brandon Cooks and whatnot we can get into. Maybe it's a bounce back scenario, leverage from last week. I mean, man, I had Cooks. I hated Cooks. I even said on the show I hated Cooks. And then I ended up with so much freaking Cooks last week that I'm so pissed. Never mind. I watch these other shows and they just convince me that like I have to play. Like I'm just dumb if I don't like this guy. It's never my fault. Anyway, yeah. And then we got Lamar now with a 13-point home favorite against the Bengals. That's interesting. Man, what's another? Oh, how do I forget the Cowboys? Talk about annihilated defenses that are just injured and just terrible. I mean, we watched Jarvis Landry throw a bomb for a touchdown against them. So you hope
such a great pass too.
You hope Daniel Jones can do something. And then you get the little revenge narrative. Jason Garrett calling the plays against his former team. 54-point total. I mean, it's a good spot for the Giants if they can do something. That offense is terrifying. I was sweating Evan Ingram in that lineup, and just like he's open every freaking play, just throw him the ball, and they have him running like these long routes way down the field, and it's like if you just cut back and just nail him, he's open for a 10-yard gain every single time. I don't get it. And they just run clock and they just run play after slow play after slow play. And it's just Jason Garrett, man. It's just, it's always seen it. And then I don't know, other than that, that's it. That's my focus right now. Any other games quickly pop off to you guys?
No, I think you basically hit it. I was looking at just kind of like ownership of the games in general. And I was kind of surprised with how low owned the Houston-Jacksonville is in comparison. So I've been trying to do a lot of builds right now, or just as of today, just with that Houston-Jacksonville game, because I like a lot of pieces there, and I was actually really surprised how low owned a lot of these guys are. Tambo, you seeing anything that kind of pops off to you?
No, you mentioned, I mean, for me, it's Carolina, Atlanta is the big one that stands out for me. I guess one thing would be, you mentioned Houston, Jacksonville. I think that's a solid spot. Dallas and the Giants looks like it's going to be the most popular by far, just looking at early ownership projections. I think there's multiple ways you can leverage that. Are they going to continue being down like that in the games and have it? Like you said, I know Jarvis Landry threw a bomb on them, but that makes it a little more interesting. The reason I like Carolina, Atlanta so much, though, is just it's kind of two really bad teams with two decent team totals up against each other. So we're looking for the competitiveness. The Ravens have like a 32-point team total. They're right there, but they're playing a team that they should just destroy. And while it could be Lamar causing the blowout, I really haven't been – I was wrong on him last week with Andrews, but again, did he break the slate or you needed Lamar or anything like that? No. So it just continues to be that way with them. And the good games for them are more defensive. Like when they played Kansas City, it's like they get blown out essentially in that sense. So I don't know. I can't keep going back there, but I love the other games you mentioned, and Carolina, Atlanta would be my favorite.
Yep. Let's start what we could normally do. Let's talk about the running back position, then we'll go over to quarterbacks, flow into wide receivers, and hit on some tight ends of this week. So at the running back position, from an ownership perspective, so we've got some really chalky plays. Then we'll just get right off the beginning with Mike Davis here. Carolina, 6,400 against Atlanta, who's just, their defense has just been horrendous. The one thing, they have kind of stopped the run. They've been really horrible against the pass. Now, the one thing that we've always, targeted them, this has just been a problem for them for forever, is the running back pass, right? It's just always against the Atlanta Falcons, and it's no difference this year. Mike Davis is also a true bell cow now. So he had a monster game last week, and what could have been a lot bigger, but he got banged up in that game, so that took him off a bunch of plays, and Reggie Bonifant came in and stole a TD, got 10 rushes and 2 targets, but Bonifant's out now. He's gone. So it's like the Mike Davis show, who's constantly gets peppered with targets that he has filled in for that CMC role. Like, that's a huge part of their offense. And now he just gets the greatest matchup for that. We know they love to pass the running back. So Davis has seen 23 targets over the last 3 weeks, which in comparison is pretty close to Zeke, who's seen 27, who also happens to run the most routes of any running back in the league. So this guy's running tons of routes. So this is a PPR dream spot. So, we're going to have to make a decision on whether we try to beat him or not. I think some other chalk guys are going to probably be David Johnson, just because he's so cheap, and everybody saw what Mixon did against Jacksonville last week, although that kind of happened on some huge plays. Their defense had been very good against the run before that. So that's something at least to ponder. And then Zeke is going to be he just is too cheap. 7,800. He just hasn't had the right game script yet. Like we talk about, like he still has basically produced, 20 fantasy points in each game. He put up 21.5 last week, which was extremely disappointing. But that game script just, game scripted him off. They were completely blown out for the most of the game until they did one of their wild Dak comebacks, at least to put up fantasy points and, keep them somewhat. They weren't even in the game, but just wasn't embarrassing. But anyways, he just hasn't had that home favorite where they dominate. They've had a lot of unlucky turnovers. Can we expect that again this week? Or maybe they turn things around now and, it's against the Giants, right? So this is where he's a big home favorite, 7,800. Touchdown regression has got to be coming his way soon. This guy's a true bell cow. He's running the most routes of any running back. It just seems like a great play. So those are like the top 3 from ownership, and then maybe Clyde, Edwards-Helaire. But what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, where you started it out with Mike Davis, I think resonates with me. Just without Reggie Bonifant, I know they signed a guy off the practice squad, but we could see him actually roll with that Christian McCaffrey role this game. The IR this year is only 3 weeks out, and so that makes C-Mac available next week. I don't know if he's going to be prepared to play next week, but we only get a few more weeks of Mike Davis left. So I think at this price, knowing that he's probably going to step into more of the C-Mac role, I kind of want to be right there and probably be over-owned on that. You're right with Zeke. Dallas, it just feels like they get behind in all these games, and he wasn't even playing a lot in the second half. It felt like they were almost
it was like they gave up. Yeah, they gave up.
And then they kept on scoring touchdowns with Pollard in, and then they kind of brought him back in. I was so upset because I had some monster lineups with Zeke in it, and I'm just like, get him out there. And obviously those 20-point games, they don't kill your lineup with Zeke, but they definitely don't help. So I mean, he's definitely has the highest ceiling, and I really think we're going to see a Edwards-Helaire smash spot one of these weeks. And I mean, it's tough to it's tough to go with certain stacks in KC, even though I've kind of been messing around with lots of different styles of stacks. But yeah, I love Edwards-Helaire this week. I know you're kind of like mentioning him last, but I can see a monster game, and now we're starting to really see his pass catching the last few weeks. I know week 1 we didn't see it, but it seems like he's fully involved in this offense now. So yeah, I think those would be my top 3, and they're going to be heavily owned, but I kind of want to be right there with those 3. You're
eating the chalk.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about some lower owned guys that I really like also, but yeah, those are my top 3 for exposure out of like the chalkier guys. I'm probably not there as much on the David Johnson, even though you're right. Jacksonville has been terrible actually on defense. I know it was kind of just a blow up spot last week for them, but they're still 27th in yards per play. This comes from Levitan, and they've only faced Phillip Rivers, Ryan Tannehill, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Thanks for getting me on Brandon Cooks. Thank you.
But I mean, that's pretty crazy. Those 4 terrible quarterbacks, and yet this Jacksonville defense has been giving up 27. They're 27th in yards per play. So definitely want to get exposure in that game. Tambo, what are the guys that you're kind of like eyeing top tier running backs here?
Well, I think you guys just said it. Kirkwood mentioned it. It's all year long so far. It's only a short season that we've been through this thus far. We're 4 weeks in, but the chalk at running back has been busting up. And I think just now we go down. People got to remember, right? 10-game slate. It's down from what we've seen there. Some different situations. You talk about Bonifant going out, and now being Davis being a true bell cow. So I'm with you actually on eating the chalk on those 3. I'm not as high on the Kareem Hunt talk, which we haven't got to yet. I'm not as high on the David Johnson conversation, but as far as Davis, Elliott, and CEH go, those totals, those games, those prices, basically situations, everything that you can talk about with them puts them all in a good spot. So you're going to have to get different somewhere else. I'm not saying you got to pile all 3 into the same lineup. Maybe something like cash, go ahead if you want, but I'll still split them up in my tournaments, but I'll definitely be using all 3. For me, it's a spot where I feel much better about that than when we segue later to wide receiver and talk about guys being 25% over there and who some of the names are. Other than that, I mean, we can move it along a little bit here in running back. I'll give you some other names, and then we'll circle back. I have to steal this one before Kirkwood steals this thunder, but I got the best secondary stack in football this week. I'm glad that this game is going because we get to play Kenyon Drake, who is finally going to pop off when he hasn't all season, but he was supposed to, against Chris Herndon, who's got the best tight end matchup, who's finally going to pop off. This is the most tilting secondary stack you can possibly play, and it makes a whole lot of sense. The matchup is good for both sides. We've been waiting for it. The prices are right. Nobody wants to play either of them, and I'm suggesting play both of them. So that's one that I had to steal the thunder on. I do like that. I like James Robinson, who you mentioned a little bit earlier, 6,700. I just think is a really fair price, for what he does, the game around it. And then just last to circle back, and you can mention some more names, but the Zeke thing, his attempts have been going down, but so is his price, first of all. And his targets, he's averaging almost 10 targets a game the last 3 games. So he's getting a lot more work in all facets of the game. Like you said, running the most routes, everything we've got there. Everyone is on Dak. Everyone's on Amari Cooper. This could be the 2-3 touchdown game for Zeke that we've been waiting for. There's been a couple instances already where he's been vultured a couple times. One game, Dak had 3, and he still got 1. I mean, 7,800 just doesn't seem right for the spot and for everything they're going to want to do. And with him getting the passing game, he's basically on the field for whatever you need in any game script here.
Yeah, so let's touch on a couple. So, man, I love DeAndre Hopkins in that game. So I'm probably going to go back. I'm going to recommend Kyler on every single show we do. It's just going to be the way it is. And DeAndre Hopkins. But, man, I don't know if I can stomach Drake, but maybe. But I do think the Jets are pretty good against the run. I just think they're a lot worse against the pass. But it does make sense. He is cheap. That eruption game is there based on usage. We just haven't seen it yet. I mean, so I get that. But Clyde the Glide, Edwards-Helaire, I want to talk about because I haven't made up my mind fully on him yet. And, what better time than now to do that? So the usage is spiking up. Like, and Brett loves him. I get that. And the usage is there. 73% of snaps. He's top 6 in carries per game, getting targets, it's definitely, which is a good thing on the Chiefs offense. But the thing that stands out to me is that the Chiefs have thrown for 11 touchdowns so far and rushed for just 1. Right. And so it's just obvious that their game plan is, yes, they're going to use the rush, but like when it comes down to like getting in that end zone, they're going to like go to Mahomes, like through like play action or something, or one of his little forward lateral handoffs so that it's a touchdown pass for his stats to Tyreek Hill, which is nice because a lot of quarterbacks, they don't take that into consideration. Who was that in San Francisco? Mullins. Do you have that when they called that when the pass that he threw behind the guy they called to Ayuk or whatever? Yeah. Wasn't a passing touchdown. Anyway, so that's the only thing there. But like, and then I go back to the thought of like, this is the highest freaking team total I've seen in ages. I don't know if I've ever seen one this high. And they're 11-point home favorites. So it's like the script is perfect. The usage is there. I just worry that they're going to end up being like Mahomes touchdowns in the end. But I like his price. He's very playable. I mean,
it's a conversation when we get to the pass game, right? Because it is interesting, like you said, with that total. If you go look at the current projected ownership on Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, and then even the guys underneath Hill in Mecole Hardman and Watkins, like these guys just aren't getting enough ownership for that total. And like you said, they all can get there. You can stack them up, but for once, their prices are a little bit more reasonable than what you've seen in the past. So it actually is an option where you could have a bunch of them stacked together and maybe get some leverage on the field that way.
Yep. And then another guy you touched on that I'm certainly interested in. You said you may not be interested that much in him is Kareem Hunt. First off, like I just asked you this question, like if Nick Chubb was 6,500 in this spot, would you be interested?
Oh, for sure. But I think there's a reason why that's a difference, right? This is a little bit different. Kareem Hunt was coming back in. They were certainly nursing him last week. He literally got 26 of the 75 snaps. I know he did work and got 2 TDs, but they had Dearness Johnson in there. They had, it was Hilliard. I forget who the other guy was. They were mixing a bunch of guys in around him, but Nick Chubb would be the bell cow back that then you'd want Hunt for some of the extra work. But I just don't think it's as safe as a spot as what people are thinking at 20% ownership. And there is other guys there. And plus you got Mike Davis where I'm just not getting cute. I know his ownership's double or almost double, but the idea is, nobody's there now and he was already in a better role and has a better matchup. That's more the reason why I'm not interested in Kareem Hunt right now.
Let me throw this at you. So we know this guy is productive, right? We know that he's actually, he's averaging 5.5 yards per carry this season, which is like mind boggling, but like, that's not going to hold up. Now, everyone's going to point to the fact that this is a tough matchup against the Colts who haven't given up a ton of rushing production. Now, the thing that worries me is the plays, right? Like the amount of play volume in this game potentially, but so it made sense to me that they didn't give him a monster workload last week because they were blowing out the Cowboys. And this was his, he was questionable to come in and he was, and had an issue with his groin. And so it just made sense. Why push him when their game is already, in hand? So that's one thing. So like, I don't think this Dearness Johnson guy is really going to be that big of a factor because like Kareem Hunt is like such a elite running back. Like if Chubb wasn't there, he'd be like one of the top running backs every single week. But like, and this is also a team that loves to run. I think they're like second for for most rushing. Anyway, so the Colts are in danger to be without their entire starting linebacking core. Their signal caller, Darius Leonard, was a DNP on Wednesday with a groin injury, did a limited drill practice only on Thursday. May play, may not play. Other guys are looking like they're not going to be playing. So, like, if they're missing their entire starting linebacking core, and they also have some secondary problems too. So I think that this is going to be a good week for the Browns in general. And like, I think it's kind of, I think like there's a lot of this narrative is going on. Like people are want to fade Kareem Hunt. They want to fade Odell Beckham, but that makes me want to play these guys more. And I just can't get over the fact that it's like, I would smash the lock button on Nick Chubb. And so, yes, there's that groin is the potential, right? But I think he's healthy. I think it's another week back. And so I don't know. I really want to play Kareem Hunt, as you can tell.
Yeah, I'd probably lean on Kirkwood's side. I know Kevin Stefanski, he came from Minnesota, and he's even talked about wanting to have, just one bell cow guy. Obviously with these two Cleveland guys, that hasn't been the situation. But I think with this injury, that's what we're going to see. I don't know how much we're going to see of Dearness Johnson. It's just the game in general I don't like. I mean, Indianapolis and Cleveland, both very run-happy style teams. I don't know how many plays you're going to get off in that spot. And the Colts defense has been really legit. So it's more or less just the spot and the amount of plays that makes me kind of off of that play.
Watch out for these injury reports, though, because this could be a completely different Colts defense. So that's something that's got my eye. James Robinson, again, I whiffed last week, but I'm still interested again against Houston. What are your guys' thoughts on Jonathan? I mean, Jonathan Taylor's over, like he's fizzled. You guys know I love him. Like he's definitely fizzled the last 2 weeks. The usage has been not ideal with Nyheim Hines, and Jordan Wilkins is eating into it. But like, I expect that to get his usage to increase. Like he's the clear guy. They do have that great offensive line. I expect it to get better and better. You can run on Cleveland. So I think for tournaments, like these are the plays that when you got to have like the like one of these running backs goes off like every week, whether it's like Aaron Jones or Joe Mixon last week. And it's like, you got to find them, right? Like they're in there. Jonathan Taylor fits like that build as like somebody that could be that guy to me.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's the game situation that I'd probably stay away from. Tambo, what do you think with the Taylor play?
More interesting, in my opinion. Yeah. And we just talked about the Hunt. I just think the Hunt one, like I said, is the narrative that's getting painted and things that you're talking about still aren't changing his ownership. Like he's still up to almost 20% already, and more stuff is coming out. Like you said, that defense is just going to keep going that way. I love opposites. If everyone's on one quarterback, I like taking the other side. I like this spot too, Kirkwood. I think it's like you said, it's one of those mix-in type plays from last week, but he gets quite a few rushing attempts, even though he's not a high snaps guy either, or hasn't been. They've been going other routes. But the one thing I do like is his rushing in the red zone, and which is what we want here. And if Indy can still move it ahead and have their game moving against Cleveland, which I think they can, you've got a lot of opportunity there. He's getting 3, 5, 6 attempts in there, a couple touchdowns in the red zone. I mean, that's all we really care about. He's going to be the guy likely to slam it in, and you kind of just have to avoid Nyheim Hines coming in and getting a 15-yard run or catch and run from outside the green zone or whatever you want to call it. So I think he's a good tournament playing at 6,200. He's not getting any love, right? Nobody's even talking about him right now. Yeah, so I like that play quite a bit.
The last guy that I don't think we really talked about was Josh Jacobs. So it's the Chiefs are a run funnel defense. Everyone's saying, and it's true. Like their defense is much improved. They're taking away the pass, and like the one thing, like you saw with the Patriots, like you saw with Damian Harris, like you can run on this Chiefs team, and you kind of have to run on this Chiefs team. They force you to run, and they'll run with Josh Jacobs. Like Gruden will do that. There's really only two. It's really only Waller or Jacobs, and Ruggs will be back, and that should. I don't expect him to be like get a ton of production or targets in this game, but I expect that kind of like deep threat to open up things more for guys like Jacobs and Waller. And so, I mean, like, again, this game, monster total, check down Charlie with Derek Carr coming from behind. It's just like, it's Josh Jacobs who can also run, and he's getting work in the passing game. He's, 6 targets, 4 targets, had one game of 3 targets, but like, and he's good. Like, this is a good running back, like nasty running back. So, and he's 6,300. So, I mean, I like all these guys we've talked about.
Yep. And I'm right there with you on the Jacobs call. I think for sure Gruden's going to get him involved early and often. You're right about it, which is so weird that KC's a run funnel, because you would think with their time of possession, or with how often they've been leading in games, that the pass to run ratio with their opponents would be super high with the leading pass. But yeah, on a production per play, I mean, they've been just giving it up via the run. So, and Jacobs has been highly involved in the pass game. So that's all I need to know. That this is, I don't feel like this is Josh Jacobs of 2019 anymore, right? This is a new guy. So 6,300 for how low Oni is going to be. I think this is a great GPP play. One other guy that I want to hear what Tambo would have to say is Jerick McKinnon. We have Raheem Mostert that's still highly questionable whether or not he's going to play. If Mostert's out, I mean, McKinnon's going to be somewhat chalky. This guy, I don't know if you saw how much he was on the field last week, but
yeah, he
was a bell cow last week, running routes, 92% snaps, getting a lot of touches everywhere. So where's your love at with McKinnon? And then just talk about the Mostert in or out.
Yeah, it's definitely sitting with that, right? We got to wait and see what happens there. But I actually love him, and it's a couple of reasons. One, you just talked about, I think he only missed like 5 snaps last week, involved heavily. They like using him. I know it was Mullins, and we're switching back to Jimmy G.
Correct.
But I also think when we get to tight end and start talking about Kittle, I've got some stats there and some nuggets that want me to leverage against that. I'm not really going to be big on Kittle this week, and I think a lot of people will be, and I get why, and he's a beast, and we saw what he did last Sunday. I mentioned earlier, Head Chopper and I did the premium Sunday video, and it was the same stats that I was using for that with Mullins. I'll just break them now. Was that, he was averaging in 2018, Kittle, almost 100 yards with Mullins. Mullins was strictly looking for him, and that continued. With him down and out, I think that it's, going back to Jimmy G, we go back to the run plan that they're used to, that Kyle Shanahan loves. And even if it's not with running, like you said, if Mostert's out, I'm going to play a bunch of Jerick McKinnon. I always liked him. I know they always liked him. They paid money for him back when he had that tough leg injury and came back from it. And at 5,800 against Miami, it's a great spot, I think. And so hoping that that's the case. Another quick note just on Jacobs. This is the guy, I think maybe you might even mention it, Kirkwood, but we've been targeting against Kansas City. And the thing is, that's the only way to go after them. So you got to try and keep Mahomes off the field for as long as you possibly can. But then, Brett, you just mentioned it, he's getting the passing work now. So I think that, you're going to see, or more of it at least, and he's averaging almost 8 yards per catch, getting, 4 or 5 targets a game. So I like Jacobs as well at 6,300. It's the Kansas City defense we've been targeting guys against. We talked about David Johnson week 1, Lamar and the boys running all over them until they gave up on the game plan. So I think that's a strong play, but I definitely like McKinnon, especially if Mostert's out. If Mostert's in, it does take away from it, obviously, because now who knows? And they've still got Jeff Wilson in the backfield as well.
Yeah, McKinnon's the guy if Mostert's out. Since it's his backfield. Basically, 97 yards and a touchdown against the Eagles is really all I need to see. The amount of snaps this guy's playing is ridiculous in the last couple of weeks. Jeff Wilson is not a factor whatsoever. Yeah, maybe there's a chance he might steal a goal line, which would suck. But other than that, I mean, you're just betting on this usage, and this guy's explosive. So I love him too. Let's see if there's any other plays from there. I mean, Antonio Gibson, people are going to talk about him. I don't really have a take yet. I mean, I think he's exciting. Certainly had a good game last week, found the end zone, 13 rushing attempts. We should be able to, and he's getting work in the passing game for 4 catches for 82 yards last week in a really tough matchup against Baltimore, right? And now has quarterback in Kyle Allen, right? That's who it is. Who's so used to just checking down to McCaffrey. This is the explosive pass catching running back in their offense, although they do have McKissick, who's getting a ton of snaps. But you would think it would just keep going up in Antonio Gibson's favor. So I like the idea of it. I haven't really come to an opinion on it though. Have you guys thought much about him?
Yeah, I mean, that's one guy that I had queued up. We have him only at like 1.5% on RG. The only issue there is J.D. McKissick is still seeing a huge role with the pass catching in this offense. I think they've been using both of these guys, though. I'll have to look in that a little bit more. But with Jalen Ramsey probably D'ing up Terry McLaurin quite a bit. And then like what you said, Kyle Allen, we know he's a check down master. I think this sets up really well and is kind of a sneakier, like this game's not over 50, right? But this is kind of a sneakier game for me because I think like I know where the ball's going. And I know Tambo brought up Chris Herndon before. He gets a new quarterback, right? And another tight end that we've also kind of just missed on is Logan Thomas, but he gets a new quarterback. We know these guys are going to be out there. And actually Herndon's been running routes. Logan Thomas's routes are still going to be there. He just hasn't been getting
He sucks.
balls.
That's the problem, is he's not good.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
terrible.
you throw in a different quarterback, though, you never know what that situation is going to look like. So I don't mind taking a shot on some of these guys in tournament formats, especially when you have a stud cornerback shutting down a Terry McLaurin, who has been such a high target share for this offense. The ball's got to go somewhere else. So I don't mind taking shots with the Antonio Gibson and Logan Thomas.
Yeah, my thoughts just real quick on that, because Kirkwood saw a little bit of the thunder. The CMC checkdown situation was all day for me, and I think it actually does help Terry McLaurin. I know the matchup's terrible, but at the same time, there's sort of some speculation out there on whether or not Ramsey is going to actually shadow. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. But I think Terry McLaurin's shown himself to be quite good these last couple games. He's getting a lot of targets, from Haskins, and now I know they're switching it, but doesn't Kyle Allen just throw the ball to the best guys? And to me, it's going to be Gibson and McLaurin. So I like both of those. I think Logan Thomas is not good. I know we're not at tight end, but you nailed another point, Brett, about my thoughts on Herndon is Joe Flacco, being a Ravens fan, absolutely loves the tight end. And I believe he's going to go there more. So that's where that came from, on top of the fact that it's the Cardinals matchup. I just haven't heard a lot of people talk about that stuff yet. And I think that's a good spot where he's going to come back and just do well in that situation. So good points there. What was your thoughts there, Kirkwood?
I don't know. I have no idea. I was thinking about James Conner, to be honest with you, and I wasn't sure whether I'm just trying to find that play who has like blow up upside, like you said, like it's like the Aaron Jones or whatever, and I think James Conner would fit the mold typically, but I don't really want to attack that Philly run defense.
I mean, I think the guys with the two highest ceilings is Zeke and Edwards-Helaire. I mean,
those are massive chalk. So I'm trying to find somebody that can break a slate and that nobody's on.
What was your thoughts on Gurley? Because I know we've been targeting against Carolina, and that's another game where everyone's in on the passing back. I'm going to have him because I'm just stacking up that game a bunch of different ways, but not just because the 2 touchdowns last week, but on the season, he's averaging a touchdown a game, 2-1-0-1, getting a few targets here and there and getting the carries. So again, do you think he can bust something out? I don't know about that ceiling you're talking about, but I think he could easily have, 20, 25, maybe not the 40 mixing, but
massive touchdown equity, right? Because, they like doing that. So I think that's in his favor. The thing I hate is that he's getting no passing game targets. It's right. Like he got 5 in that first week and then 1, 0, and 2. It's like he's looking older and older each game, and it's like he just makes sense. But he's cheap, and I could definitely see a spot where he gets 2 or 3 touchdowns against.
I kind of like him for FanDuel because of that. Yeah, exactly. He's going to pound in 3 touchdowns with 60 yards and 1 catch for 10 or something. But it's kind of sad too when you look back, because last week with Julio injured and Ridley, I don't know if he was playing injured or what, man, this guy couldn't get even a point on the board. But, even then, Gurley still only got 1 target for 1 reception for 6 yards. So it's like they're not really looking for him regardless of game flow or anything and injury and all. So I like him maybe more for FanDuel, but I just know that we've been targeting that Carolina matchup and the opposite side of the Mike Davis chalk. So I kind of think that's an interesting spot as well.
I think there's massive touchdown equity there. And so if things break right, he could have a big day. I don't know. I just hate, like I said, the lack of passing game. So yeah, I'll probably have a little of them, but not loving him. Let's see.
Look at quarterback.
Yeah, let's not taking too much time. All right, quarterback. Dak is going to be very popular on, just because obviously the numbers. I mean, was he on pace to break like every passing record in the
like over
NFL?
6,000 yards, I believe.
Yeah. And I mean, man, 43 fantasy points, 33, 42 fantasy points, is a threat to, steal Zeke's touchdown thunder too with his legs. So we always want guys who can run them in, and Dak makes a lot of sense. However, the Giants are slow playing, and like we said, this could be a Zeke week. So this could be a week where everybody's, rushing to get on Dak and Amari, who's going to be shadowed by Bradbury. And, maybe it's a week for us to just back off and play Zeke and find some better that we think a little bit lower owned options that, maybe have just as much upside. Deshaun Watson is interesting. He's going to be chalky. 6,900 against Jacksonville. It's just interesting to see what they do after the firing. I mean, Will Fuller, it's an easy connection between him and Will Fuller. Obviously we could go back to Brandon Cooks with him. Or, we're allowed to do that. I don't know if we want to do that, but we're allowed to. Teddy Bridgewater is getting some love. I've thrown around because it's the matchup with Atlanta, but mainly it's because he's so stackable, right? Like he had a good game last week, 27 fantasy points against Arizona. There's like condensed target tree is you want the Seattle condensed target tree? Well, you got it with Carolina with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. We haven't had the DJ Moore eruption game. We all think it's coming. We'll talk about that when we get the wide receiver. But
did you guys see that scramble, by the way, with Teddy Bridgewater? I didn't know he had that in him.
Yeah,
that
nice.
athleticism. Surprised me big time, and that was versus Kyler. So I don't like that. After I saw that made me way more interested in him for sure.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes, after a bad game by his standards, 20 fantasy points against a really tough defense in New England, a really shaky week with the COVID stuff and all of that, and changing the time of the game. But like the Pats defense is still really good. Belichick is still really good. It makes sense, but now you get a bounce back spot with the highest team total I think I've ever seen, I've said, and against the Raiders. So like, I really like Patrick Mahomes. And I know you guys like Allaire, but like if the more chalkier Allaire is, like the more I want to just be with like Patrick Mahomes and like Tyreek or Patrick Mahomes, even Sammy Watkins or Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey for sure. Daniel Jones, let's get to it. Let's start. So, I mean, this is against the Giants, right? Like this is like, so he's cheap, right? We need that. He's so easy to pair with, like in a game with a monster total with Slayton, who's like a clear number one wide receiver. Tate, you could sprinkle in some too. Well, Evan Ingram is going to have a big game if they would just utilize this dude properly, in my opinion. But like, this is a Swiss cheese defense of the Cowboys who's missing so many people. They've just been getting torched. And so also he adds a little rushing upside, right, to the table. He does run. He likes to run. He has rushed for touchdowns. He's got 21, at least 21 yards in every game on the ground, average 34 yards per game. And now, in this great matchup. So Daniel Jones, I know he's like, it's like chalk Daniel Jones. So it's like, or semi-chalk Daniel Jones. So that's kind of gross, right? But like, if there was ever a time to play Daniel Jones, it's this week.
Yeah, and I think the big thing though is his running has gone up since they lost their boys. So, I mean, his last two performances, 45 yards, 49 yards. He's scrambling more. Just hasn't had a touchdown in 3 weeks, right? So it's kind of tough. I mean, I don't know exactly where I am because when I did see his ownership, to me, I think it's just easier to go with Teddy Bridgewater here. But Daniel Jones, man, he won you some GPPs last year. In fact, I think he had 4 over 30 points last year. It's just, this is a totally different offense, So I don't know, man. Like,
well, like they have potential, right? They got Ingram, They've got Slayton, who he has a connection with. They got Golden Tate.
Love Slayton. Yeah.
Their running game sucks, which is good in my eyes. Because like they should pass it against this team that can't stop anybody. They can't stop Jarvis Landry from passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I hope Jason Garrett, like, because it's the revenge game, I hope he does something like good for this game and like starts unleashing the passing game.
Are you guys thinking like skinny stacks with Jones and hope he gets one with his legs, or are you comfortable with double stacking Tambo?
I mean, Slayton is so obvious.
Yeah. Tambo, would you double stack him, or do you think you only stack him with one guy?
I'm going to double stack him still. I think you could. I'm going to have a mix of both, to be honest. But because my quarterback pool is not actually that large this week. I know we're down to 10 games, but it just feels like, some of the options that we lost were guys that were normally on, and a guy like, Josh Allen, right? That would have been interesting. Mm-hmm. So, the thing about it is the only problem I really have with it, I love Jones this week. Everything Kirkwood just said sort of, chimed in on. I'm with you. I know he hasn't had it yet, but the upside is there. It's that, okay, Slayton right now projected for 22% ownership, and I loved him, but all of a sudden he's popping up at 22. You look at tight end, 18% projected ownership on Ingram. So in my double stacks, what I will do is I will likely separate Slayton and Ingram, because I think if people are going like the most obvious stack in the world, even though the ownership doesn't fully reflect it just yet, with only showing around 10% on Jones, but I see Jones, Slayton, Ingram, use Zeke, boom, there you go. You got the nuts, right? That's just never works. So I'll probably separate it. I actually do like your call there. I think it's Tate, right? Is the other play there?
He'll be the guy who doesn't get the ownership. And I remember he had a monster game against the Cowboys. I know it means nothing at BVP.
How is he not suspended, by the way, for what he did after the game? Like, how is that not
fight?
Yeah. Like
I like it because I like that. I like seeing some fire. I like that.
No, it was something to do with his sister, right? Ramsey dated her, didn't treat her right, or whatever. So I think that they took, because there was so much mutual, personal, everything. There's so much other shit going on. I think they just said, you know what? Let this one slide, even though he punched him in the face.
Yeah, I was like expecting for sure a one gamer right there, but yeah, not hearing anything. Not even a fine. So. Weird.
There's a little narrative for you. Maybe he goes off the weekend.
Another narrative, Jason Garrett calling the plays with the Giants going back to Dallas. I mean, I don't know. Garrett has not looked good with this offense. They just have no identity. But you're right. Nice soft landing spot. A game where they should be passing a ton. They haven't gotten off with the run game here. So, I mean, I'm going to have stacks for sure. So
yeah, and you could also put Tate with Slayton, because I think people are always doing the one or the other. They're 4.8 and 4.6. So people are looking at it like, oh, can't play Slayton because he's super chalk. I'm going to move to Tate and I'm sharp. Play them both. The other way to get different is to play them both together, where most people are making the 1v1 and deciding on which one they're going with, and then leave Ingram chalk off. So I'll have a mixture of all that, but that is the way I like to play it. I think in order for them to get there and have, this massive ceiling, I think he does have to involve a little bit more. If he ends up running 3, that's why I'll have some of those, but, we're him with one guy. But I just don't see that right against Dallas. I see more of a passing game, so that's why I'm going that route.
Yep. Man, we can't play Jimmy Garoppolo, can we?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't.
All right, that's all I need to hear. Who's gonna tout Matt Ryan? Which one of you two? Okay.
I don't think it's terrible at home. In a spot where I feel comfortable where he's throwing the ball. I mean, he's not going to get you anything with the legs, but I mean, I think you can almost pencil in 300 yards at home versus this Carolina team. Just because I'm not big on Gurley putting up high yardage. Sure, he's a red zone guy, could take away touchdowns, but I think most of his offense is still going to go through the way of the air. So I don't hate it. 6,100. We're starting to see a pretty big price gap now between the running quarterbacks and the throwing quarterbacks. So I'm going to start using these throwing quarterbacks a little bit more often. Tougher to get correlation with the running quarterbacks, right? Because like the Lamar Jacksons, you can't really double stack him because he's going for 200 yards passing. You're hoping he gets it mostly with the legs. Deshaun Watson is at 6,900, so that's the closest that you see. And I'll have plenty of stacks there. But yeah, I mean, Ryan, I feel very comfortable with a bounce back spot at home versus Carolina.
You know what? The other side too of the Bridgewater. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, if you're everyone's talking about Bridgewater, me included, I love it. But if you're gonna do that, and like I said, I'm just all over this game, and it's a $200 discrepancy, so I'm just gonna flip sides with them in some. But I just, anytime we have that, now they're both showing pretty similar ownership, to be honest, so it's not gonna be a huge difference. But I do think, if you're gonna build some of these lineups with just Mike Davis, for Carolina side and run with Matt Ryan. We're going to talk about the Carolina tight end later, Ian Thomas. I'm going to bring him up. So there's a few ways you can do it here. And that's just, like I said, a game that I'm all over. They both have a really high total and it's on both sides. And it's a game where both teams are kind of terrible. And normally people think those games aren't going to be good. This one, Vegas tells us it will be based on the total. Doesn't mean it's always going to come true, but I am going to have both sides. And there's a lot of stackable options of guys you can go back to with a guy like Matt Ryan. So I'm going to be in on that for sure.
I was just gonna say with like the double stack, like what you were alluding to or talking about, Brett.
Sure.
Like rushing quarterbacks, great. I'm totally fine playing them with just one, option, and so like they both can easily get there, and then just like correlating the rest of my lineup, right? Like having like two different wide receivers from the same game without their quarterbacks in that same lineup. So like if more people are starting to like double stack and triple stack, and sometimes it's just like it just makes sense, right? Like it just leads you there because of like the pricing on players and like the options. Like Carolina would be that option this week, but like when I'm fine with like going back to like the old plain vanilla single stacks, when everybody else is going in on the double and triple stacks. And what better way to do that is with a guy who has rushing upside.
For sure.
Is what my thought was. Any interest you guys with like, I love Lamar. Cincinnati's defense ranks like to be middle of the road, like DVOA, but they haven't faced anybody. And Lamar should just light it up. And then you've got, Marquise Brown, obviously. And then you've got your boy, Edwards, Andrews, sorry. Mark Andrews, who's been a little bit hobbled up. They're both, this whole team is supposedly questionable, but I think it's just like the Belichick thing. They're all going to be fine. Andrews had a big game last week, but on limited targets and receptions, but, found the end zone twice. But like, we'll get into wide receiver play, but like you have to like Marquise. Marquise Brown is going to explode soon. He's just like, could have exploded. He just had some like drops or like misses from like inches, they just haven't connected properly, but like Cincinnati can't hang with them from a speed matchup. And and Lamar is going to go off soon. So you just hope Cincy can score and put up some points with them, and I think they can.
Something that in narratives here, like Lamar Jackson's missed Marquise Brown on a few big throws, and you can tell it's paining Lamar, like when he misses those big shots. So I think this is a great spot. Marquise Brown, I think because of his price point on DraftKings, is going to be very low owned. I think he's one of the best tournament plays for that reason alone. A soft spot for them to get a little bit of connection here. Dominating this team in air yards, even target share. So, in a spot where Mark Andrews, man, like I don't know why they're doing so much two tight end sets now. It's like Nick Boyle is like getting a lot of these red zone routes, scored a touchdown. So I'm going to shy away from Andrews. I know he's going to be lower owned, but I'd rather go to like a lower owned Waller than a lower owned Andrews this week.
Yeah, I always talk about this. I'm not really high on Lamar ever. The only thing about this week, I will say one thing, and I'm still going to be underweight, but I like what we just talked about. You got the Russian quarterback. We've been waiting for an explosion. You can put him with Marquise Brown, run it back with Boyd, and just cut it off right there and just shut it down. Or you could even have Lamar and Boyd in the same lineup and just leave it at that and let Lamar do his thing. And the only reason I'll even have any is because the shorter slate. And if Lamar just blows up and finally has his 37 or 40-point game and Dak and Mahomes don't, then that could be a huge difference maker for you in these large field GPPs. But again, he doesn't do, or he hasn't been doing enough. I know it's, Cincinnati and he finally gets a good setup here, but I don't know, man. Like I said, there's just so many other guys. You mentioned Mahomes, love it. Dak's crushing it right now. Deshaun, new coach, let him cook a little bit, move around there. And then what about, I don't know if your next thought was going here, Kirkwood, but Kyle Allen at $4,100.
Yeah, he's like so cheap you don't even see him.
I'm gonna play him. I'm gonna play him.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you've got Scary Terry. You've got Gibson. Like he's got weapons. It's a tough matchup defense, but like he's 4,100. Has the momentum to come in and like he's gonna try to open things up. So they're trying to do something, and so yeah, I can get behind. Of course, for like GPPs, you got to play some at 40.
They're very fun lineups to build, man. You could get him going. Yeah, back to Brett earlier. You were talking about Logan Thomas. Like I said, I think he sucks, but get like a Kyle Allen, Gibson, Thomas lineup and just let those checkdowns work. And I'm interested when we get to wide receiver because you said you got the LA side handled or you feel good about it. So I want to know who that is because these are stacks that I like and take down something big.
Yeah. I like
right.
Carr.
You get that and you can fit those in. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, I don't like Carr, but he's 5,300, and like if the green breaks the way it should, and like we touted Jacobs and his running back, like and the way to beat them is through the run, but like if stranger things can happen than Derek Carr all of a sudden putting up points in the passing game on the Chiefs.
I mean, I don't think Kansas City should be favored by 13 in this spot. I like the Oakland side for sure. And this Raiders offense getting Ruggs back, I think alleviates so much pressure in a lot of different areas. Like, I don't think you can stack the box because they want to run the ball. And then Waller shouldn't be as highly targeted in double teams. So I don't know. I like this spot a lot for Oakland in general. Don't know how much Carr I will have, but that's one thing that I've written down for sure is just to get a decent amount of exposure to Vegas for tournaments.
And I gotta have some Kyler. I say it every week, but like it's disgusting after his. I mean, he still put up 24 fantasy points, but it was a disappointing performance last week, especially for DeAndre Hopkins. But like I'm gonna like DeAndre Hopkins this week. I mean, the Jets have the worst secondary from a talent perspective in the league, and so I'm gonna have some Kyler and some DeAndre Hopkins. That's it, though. I have no other QBs I really want to even discuss. I think we've nailed them all. So let's. I guess unless you guys want to throw like Jared Goff or Fitzy or something.
No, I'm good. We've touched all the ones that I've got queued up.
All right. Wide receiver position. The chalk. So DJ Moore is going to be chalky at 6K. Robbie Anderson's going to be chalky at 5,900. That's because of the game and the defense that they're opposed to. They're playing Atlanta. It's just terrible. And this is the condensed target tree that I talked about. So let's talk about him. So, okay. DJ Moore crushed me last week. Had him everywhere. But you got to go back to him again. And that feels bad because he's chalky. But, like, he's going to erupt soon. He just literally has to. So all of his stats are still there. Ranks 11th in total air yards. About 44% of his team's total air yards. 15th in yards per reception. Like, he's like – I went through like every little statistic with him. Average of 16 in yards per reception, and ranks 12th in total targets. So he's like top 12, like top 12 to 15, like every possible category you could possibly have, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna give him one more chance against the Falcons because if you can't do anything against the Falcons, you can't. Like, I'm just done. I just can't take the pain anymore. But the Falcons ranked 31st in DVOA against the pass. It's tough though because you got to play this. You got to think about how you want to make these lineups and how to get a little unique with them because these guys are all chalky and they all take away from each other. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Now Robbie Anderson's for real, right? Like now we know this guy's a deep threat. That was the thing. He's always a deep threat, but he's actually seeing short targets. More short targets than DJ Moore and stuff. So he's like totally he's a big deal in this team. And then you got Mike Davis. But do you guys do you have a lean one or the other? If you have, or do you like just pairing them both, or do you like just playing, your percentages of both?
For me, I'm leaning 100% to DJ Moore. Just looking at ownership, it's like 2-1 currently at RG, favoring Robbie Anderson. And I'm right there with you with DJ Moore. He is running longer routes, and so I think that's he just hasn't been catching on as many balls. But yeah, I lean there. Tambo.
Yeah. It just feels like the Will Fuller thing, right? Last year, remember, we just kept like the flop leg. You just keep chasing him, and then eventually he's going to have that 45 or 54. What was it, like 54 points that Will Fuller got last year?
Yeah,
it was something
like,
insane. Or maybe it was that. Oh, it was huge ownership, huge number that he put up. And it was like, if you play a guy every week, of course it's going to happen. But to Kirkwood's point, this is the matchup, right? So, and as you said, Brett, right now, that ownership is enticing. So I'm probably leaning that way. I'm
not buying that ownership.
I think it's a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's going to, I think they're both going to be very similar in ownership too. Close. I think Moore is going to be heavily more fair. I think Moore's going to get more ownership, but they're both going to be extremely chalky. That's the way I think it's going to be.
Makes sense to me.
All right, let's talk about the next guy, or a couple of next guys. So let's talk about same game. Like, are you guys like on the Amari Cooper because he's a freaking stud and the numbers he's putting up, or are you scared with the Bradbury treatment, and maybe it's CeeDee Lamb's week because they do get hit in the slot pretty well, the Giants do. So you guys have an opinion there, I'll ask. And then Darius Slayton, we already touched on that, but like I just got to give my spiel with him. I love him. It's first of all, it's the matchup, it's the game environment for him, but like he is a clear number one. He looks awesome. This Cowboys D just lost everyone. They're awful to begin with, but they lost Chidobe Awuzie. They only have Trayvon Diggs, Darryl Worley, who've been absolutely murdered over the last two games for 3 touchdowns. And Slayton is the clear number one wide receiver. I do think Tate could break off. We did pop on that, but like he's 4,800. So it's like, you just like, I can easily envision him like going off, like if like Jones plays a decent game and they're in catch-up mode, you could easily see him putting up like 20 to 30 fantasy points. And for 4,800, you're going to need that. You know what I mean? So I can get there, but Cooper, I'm not sure about. So what are you guys thinking with in this same game?
Yeah, when you're talking Slayton, gridiron IQ, like if you just look at just the wide receivers, like he dominates like everything. Air yards, the high value opportunities are crazy. He's got 4 inside that 10-yard line, 4 from the goal line to the 5, and then 3 end zone targets. I mean, Golden Tate's only got 1 inside the 10. So just to, for comparison's sakes, yeah, I mean, there should be a bigger gap than $200, and you're going to pay for it in ownership percentage, right? So I get it. It's a tough fade. I'll be having them in cash. I don't exactly know where I'll be in tournaments. But for Dallas side, I'm really trying to sell all the passing more or less. So definitely lower on Amari Cooper. I think the one guy that I will have is Lamb quite a bit in the slot versus the Giants. Outside of that, I don't know. I don't see myself getting too much Dak Prescott exposure this week, especially in comparison to the field. Tambo, where are you at with that game?
Yeah, it could be wrong, but I feel like it's right, so I'm rolling with it. But I'm really big on Zeke. We already talked about him earlier, so I'm going to be under on Cooper. And just doubling down on earlier and just kind of thinking of looking into it a little bit more on the Slayton stuff, I think it might actually be key to just use Slayton. And he's a guy I love, and all the reasons you just mentioned, a couple others. He's averaging like 7.5 targets a game. He's got 6 red zone targets. I mean, he's getting the usage. You talked about the gridiron IQ stats. Everything that goes with him at 4,800 is just ridiculous. The injury status, too cheap. Yeah, it's good. And right now, 21% is probably too low for what he should be. And maybe it goes up more. I'm just saying, let's just see what happens here as the week goes on. But I do like that. I think if anything, I'm going to play some of Tate. I'll probably separate Tate and Ingram and mix them up, because it's going to be one of them across the middle that can just rack up PPR points and maybe snake one of the touchdowns or something there. But Slayton is just too cheap at 4,800. So I definitely like that. That leads back to Daniel Jones talking about stacks, and then just using it with Zeke. Like I said, I don't think it's as good when you've got Slayton, Ingram, Jones, and Zeke. I just think that's too common of a stack. So maybe look for other ways to get different. Like if you didn't use Ingram, you could use Schultz who will go to later. You just mentioned Lamb, Brett. I'm with you on that. This guy's getting all kinds of usage, rushing attempts. I know it's only like one a game, but he's still getting a chance, and he's electric with the ball in his hands. So I think there's other ways to use. They have Gallup. They have a lot of guys that they can use. And Amari last week was incredible, and he's getting a lot of usage. And 7,400 might be too cheap, probably is, but it's also Amari. I mean, we can bust in a heartbeat. And at what's looking like it's trending towards 25 plus ownership, that is a little bit scary because very common spot that we see bust in NFL DFS is the high-priced, high-owned wide receiver.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about some other guys from the higher end. So I love DeAndre Hopkins. So that's somebody that I think we should touch on. Also, Tyreek Hill, right? Like with this monster team total, 6,900, certainly has upside there. Calvin Ridley, like this guy, weird, really strange game last week, right? With him coming back from injury, not even getting a reception on just 5 targets. However, this dude produces. He's a great route runner, like is absolutely electric. Julio Jones should be out. Russell Gage will be back. I mean, he's a number 1 wide receiver in a game with a monster total that we're expecting a ton of fantasy production. So it's, I mean, Ridley looks pretty damn good to me. And he looks a little bit expensive that like he won't get too much. He's going to get ownership, but not too much ownership, you know? But like, if this was like, he's better, like to me, he's better than Julio Jones was. So like I would have paid 7,500 for Julio Jones a couple of years ago. No problem. Easily. So like, I have to be there with him. And Will Fuller, I like a lot. So Hopkins, Fuller, Ridley, and Tyreek, your guys' thoughts?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I don't know. I think Ridley is going to be the highest owned out of the elite wide receivers, especially once the Julio news comes down. I think a lot of people just are going to pivot towards Ridley. So I think that Amari Cooper ownership will go down a little bit for that. But I'm kind of there with you with DeAndre Hopkins being just way too low owned. If those two guys are going to get massive ownership, I'd go right back to DeAndre Hopkins for probably somewhere around a third of the ownership that you're going to see out of these two. But yeah, that's just looking at the top 3. That's kind of how I'm breaking that down. If I have to choose between Ridley and Cooper, I'm going Ridley all day there. Just like that game in general to shoot out more, a lot more passing. I don't trust the running backs to carry the ball as efficiently as through the air. So yeah, that's kind of just what I'm seeing with the top 3. Tambo, how do you break down the top 3?
The Hopkins call is great. I mean, look at the ownership. It just doesn't make any sense. His price is only 7,900. It's a good matchup. His floor and ceiling are probably the highest or very close to between all of them. I'd say his floor is definitely the highest and his ceiling is, you can argue it, but I think it's there. With Amari being that owned, and like I said, even if it does come down some, again, people are just, it's like the DJ Moore on steroids with a guy like Ridley. Everyone's just ignoring it. They don't care that he had 0 points last game and burned them. People move on quick, easy spot. When when the Julio news comes down, it's going to be all Ridley, and it just goes from there. But that game environment, so I'll definitely have some of them. We've probably been doing this longer than most. We're just ignoring that. You even just mentioned Will Fuller, Kirkwood. This guy just burned you last week for tens of thousands, and he's automatic.
No,
right?
he was good for me. It wasn't. It was the
no. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but it came back.
The officials burned me.
Yes, true. But I'm saying like some people would naturally be like, oh, if that had went this way, I'd be more like that's old school now. We don't see that anymore. It's who are the plays, play them. I think those are all good plays. The one I want to hear more on, someone needs to sell me on this, is besides the price of 6,900, but Tyreek Hill can break a slate in a heartbeat. It's a great matchup, but I just don't know what to do there with other guys, right? There's Kelsey, there's Watkins, there's Hardman, there's Robinson, CEH, there's everybody. So what are we doing with Tyreek Hill, Kirkwood?
We're playing him. That's what we're freaking doing. Let me pull some stuff up on him. So, I mean, there's no one that can break a slate like Ty. Yeah, Hardman could, but like he can't break a slate. Hardman can get like that one long one, whatever. But like Tyreek is going to get peppered with targets and is just explosive and can absolutely break a game open. And that's the upside we're chasing. And he's still in that price range where he's fine. let me see here. So the Raiders allowing pretty high yards per reception to receivers. They've LaMarcus Joyner in the slot where Hill plays, so that's a plus for him. And I mean, this is Tyreek. This is a game with the highest total on the slate, and like Allaire is going to be extremely chalky. His ownership. I mean, this is the highest team total that I've ever seen. And if there's I want to play Patrick Mahomes because this is a team, like I said, that has 11 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. This is an offense that loves to pass, that's designed to pass. And who is his main pass weapon? It's Tyreek Hill. It's that's his number one. Now, can he bust? Absolutely. But that's why you nail him in GPPs, right? Because you want that 30-plus point upside. So I think you have to have some Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and if you're kind of like me, if you think this game's going to be close, I mean, if you get that 4 quarters of usage out of him, man, you got to love this spot. He's underpriced at 6,900. He's had a touchdown weirdly in every single game. We haven't seen a massive game out of him yet, but I mean, both these wide receivers, Sammy Watkins at 4,500, that's a joke. That's so cheap. Perfect in a if you want to stack this if you want to grab, Sammy, Tyreek, I think both are in play. Yeah, I'm going to have many different ways of stacking this game up. Even like Tyreek Hill's upside alone in non-stacked formats. Sammy Watkins, I think, has such a high floor with the target share there that, I mean, I like Kansas City a lot. In this
and he's still produced 21 fantasy points against Baltimore and 16 against New England. He's still and those are 2 insanely tough matchups, right? And now he gets the Raiders. So it's it's just I have to play him. There's no way I'm not playing
quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just was going to note one more thing, though. Talked about ways to stack the game. Just one interesting note. We did some of the research on this on one of the Showdown shows. I think it was against Baltimore because it was for Showdown for an island game. But him and Kelsey literally never go off together. It's 44 for Kelsey,
totally
6 for Hill, and just so I mean, which seems like a bit, but at the same time, you think isn't that their 2 stars? But they literally have Tyreek Hill games and Kelsey games. So just
and they're both priced so high that you can't even do them anyway. It's together.
I have a negative 0.24 correlation with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill. So, and that's over 16 games. So, yep.
But people stack Brown and Andrews, and
no, I mean you can actually do it.
You can do it. It's just
you're going to be
really
playing
something to make sure you don't do it. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, playing your boy Zacchaeus. You're going to be playing your boy Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
This gives you a good idea too. Tyreek Hill has a 0.53 correlation with Edwards-Helaire. That's only obviously through 3 games. Sammy Watkins, he's played 14 games. He's got a 0.46 positive correlation. So great. That's a great thing to bring up because when you do these double stacks, you need to find out players that have those high ceiling games together. That makes sense in certain scripts. So I like that a lot, Tambo.
I like a Hill and Watkins lineup, for example. That's what I'm saying versus that. And if you can switch it up, take out Hill,
definitely
use your Kelsey and switch it up that way. And then, that's how I'm going to be attacking the spot like this.
I mean, Watkins' target volume is great.
4,500. He seems like a really bad price as far as, in a good way. That's cheap.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Great other play off of Slayton too, a chalky Slayton.
Yeah.
Throw some more. Any other plays you got? DJ Chark came back, 29 fantasy points in his first game back from injury against the Bengals. Didn't even get he got in the end zone twice. Didn't even get the 100-yard bonus. Only 95 yards. Clear number 1 though. Now in what should be a very good matchup for him against Houston, who's just not a very good defense at all. Clearly. And I like Robinson too in the running back game, but Chark for 6,500, I feel like no one's going to be playing him. And this is a guy with monster upside.
Yeah. And when I play around with my game stacks, I really look at just total ownership in general. This game, you can basically mix and match everybody and not really have to worry about ownership. Everybody's coming in very low owned. Even I got Will Fuller on RGs at 10%. Yeah, and like you brought up Shark's only 9.4%. I think he's a great play at that price in a spot where this Houston Jacksonville game has a good shot of being the highest scoring, and it's within a touchdown game, could definitely shoot out. Yeah, so ownership. Just when looking at ownership, I love stacking that game.
And Cooks, man, we didn't bring up Cooks, but we mentioned him earlier. Like, what are we doing? But like right now, it's showing 7%. It's almost like the opposite effect of everything we just talked about, or the Will Fuller situation last year, or anything like that, where people are just saying, "Nah, not for me," and then forget that it was just a couple of weeks ago playing against Baltimore when he almost had the 100-yard bonus on just 5 catches. Like, he can break it in one play, and it's $4,100 in the same matchup that we're talking about, where you can run it back with Robinson, Chark, those guys, get your Watson on, get your Fuller in the same stack if you want. There's so many options there in this game, and it's got such a high total that I think it's certainly a bounce back spot at 4,100, and I'll be happy to have shares.
Yep. Makes a pretty easy stack. But I love Fuller too. All right. I'm just trying to scan down the list here. I can't.
We should probably talk about the 3K guys here.
I can't go, and I can't mention T.Y. Hilton again on this show. I'm sorry if anyone's played him because of me. And
what about those Rams guys, Brett? You said you had it all. You got Kupp or Woods, or where you at in that spot, or do you got Higbee or Everett, or where you at with the Rams side of things in that game?
So yeah, I've kind of been just mixing and matching. That is my one spot that I've kind of been just throwing in different stacks. That is probably going to be pretty low owned. Right now, I have more Cooper Kupp currently, but both Kupp and Woods, same price. There's not a defensive back that I worry about in Washington. In fact, there was a stat like that they've given up the most air yards with wide receivers being open. So out of any defensive backfield. So I think you can mix and match. I probably won't ever get 2 LA guys in one lineup just because I'm not big on stacking with Goff. But in the unique Kyle Allen stacks, like I love bringing it back with I'm probably siding with Cooper Kupp right now at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there too.
And last piece of advice I'll say is don't be scared to play clear number 1 wide receivers like Devontae Parker, and for 50, any of these guys that are 5,900, that range is always that pop off range, right? That's where you can get massive upside on these wide receiver ones that aren't going to be heavily owned because people think that the matchup is bad or whatever. But these are guys that can produce. So the guys that stand out to me in kind of that range are, Devontae Parker definitely stands out. And a little bit higher is Shark, like I just mentioned, but any of these guys can go off for monster games. Terry McLaurin, Will Fuller, those all fit the bill. All right. Did we talk enough about wide receiver? We should go down to the crap range?
Talk about the cheap guys. I think Olamide Zaccheaus is going to be super highly chalk out of he might be the chalkiest wide receiver on the slate just because he's 3K. Once we get the Julio Jones news with him being out, this guy slides in and you got to love the routes, the target share and everything. But what do you do with a guy that's going to be, 25-30% owned, Tambo?
Do you really think he's going to be that high owned?
I think he's going to be super highly because he wouldn't have been that highly owned, I think, if Damiere Byrd was on the slate. But now you remove the 3K Damiere Byrd. And I think he's going to be really chalk.
3K range is terrible this week. Also, it's going to be a good segue in a second when we get there. I know it doesn't show much ownership for him now, but everyone does want to play more expensive tight ends this week. So where are they going to pay down? And that's at wide receiver. The spot does make sense, but man, I don't think I can go there. I like Russell Gage. I like Ridley, who we just talked about. And then they were even rotating in Christian Blake. And I'm not going there. I'm just saying it's not like this lockdown thing because he got 9 targets last week and 6 the week before that. It's going to be him. I don't know. I see what you're saying, but maybe for your cash games, like you said, or your high dollar single ender, I just don't see him busting it wide open and dropping 20 fantasy points or something where you absolutely must have him. So that's sort of my feel on that spot, almost like a cheap version of what I always talk about with Lamar. Lamar's going to have a great game every game, but is he going to bust the slate? Probably not. This guy could have a great $3,000 wide receiver game, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be necessary in your lineups.
I'll try my damn hardest if I'm got builds that are, putting in the 3K. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Zacchaeus or whatever, but to get up to Russell Gage. And the Carolina's so bad in the slot. I think last week was an anomaly. Everybody was just injured. Like, I think with another week now with Ridley back and with Gage back, both of these guys, I just expect that will be the focus in this game plan.
He is going to be out there. His snaps and routes run are perfectly correlated with Julio Jones on and off field. So he steps right in to where Julio Jones plays. Obviously, way different wide receiver, a lot smaller.
I think we're more likely to see the game before, though, where he got 8 points. We played Chicago and got 4 receptions, 40 yards. Awesome. That's cool. 8 points. I'm just saying for 3K, that's solid in your cash games to make everything else work. I think this slate was still with 10 games with all those plays. Even, Kirkwood was mentioning guys in the 5K range that can blow up, that can score 30. I think there's too many of those. And what was Mixon last week? 4.6K or 5.6. He was cheap. There's going to be these guys in this mid range that go off enough that if this guy does 4 for 6 for 40 yards again, it's not going to matter. It's cool for him at 3K, but it's not cool for us.
And I guess Zach Pascal is in play just because it's clear he's taking over. But I'm not giving up on I'll have some T.Y. Hilton, but I'm not going to tout him.
Yeah, I played a ton of Zach Pascal last week, actually, especially around Yahoo where he's the bare min. But, yeah, this week, again, just a really bad spot with that Indianapolis at Cleveland game. I'll probably stay away from it.
All right, tight end. The top range is where we want to get. I mean, look, okay, so the key to me, last week, having a good MME slate was not allowing tight end into my flex spot, number one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like anyone at tight end last week and just jacking up, jacking up the volatility on who I play. This week, it's completely different. Darren Waller is a wide receiver 1 for 5,900 in a game with a monster total where they're probably going to be playing catch up. George Kittle is just freaking nuked the last game against Philly for 43 fantasy points. Now, granted, Tambo made some good points about potentially, being underweight or fading him to some degree because Garoppolo being back, but we're lying to you if you're saying if we don't say that this guy can absolutely break a slate. He can. Yeah. It's George Kittle. He's phenomenal. Travis Kelce's in the same boat, and has had monster games against the Raiders. He's in his last 4 games, gone for 107 yards per game, including a 2 touchdown game performance against the Raiders. And was quiet last week. So potentially, could just erupt again. Evan Ingram is a guy I talked about that I liked. 4,600. I just think this guy's an athletic freak. He's huge. He can run. Just fucking pass it to him. You know what I mean? Stop sending him out on these 30-yard routes downfield that Jones is not going to complete. And just let this guy crush.
He did get 10 targets last week. I mean, it's let him have better targets.
There was better one. He could have had so many more. Literally, they just wasted so much clock and they just ran the ball with these crappy running backs, and it's there's so much opportunity there with this guy, and so I can see a monster game coming if they would just use him correctly. Other than that, those are the 4 that I love. Mark Andrews I like because he's another number 1, number 2 wide receiver, running lines up in the slot too. That you're putting in the tight end position. That's the theme. Then we've got we do have cheap plays. This is I know Tambo mentioned this already. You go back to Chris Herndon, Hope, Flacco loves to throw to the tight end. hope that they don't just have this guy out there blocking all game and utilize him. And he's 3,200, and people are just sick, to their stomach and don't want to play him. Eric Ebron could, have a good game. There's Logan Thomas, you guys touched on, could finally be a somewhat decent spot. Guess who's back in our lives? Gerald Everett, who potentially who's running a lot more routes on the field a lot last week. 2,500. Like I actually kind of am excited about tight end this week because there's like so many good plays as opposed to last week where I just wanted to puke.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of decision points for sure this week. I think I'm going to side with talent. I really like Kittle over Kelsey this week. I know what Tambo said. I just feel like this guy's really coming into his own, and he's going to dominate any matchup. So I'm right there with Kittle. I think ownership-wise, Waller, man. I love this spot for Waller. Probably my favorite bring back out of the Raiders guys with my KC stacks will be Waller. So
he's going to be heavily owned, man. I don't know I don't know if you're looking at Jermino's update or thing, but like, I promise you that thing's going up.
Okay.
The ownership is going to be Kittle, Waller, Kelsey. Like those three are going to soak it up. Like people are they're not skipping out on Waller.
Yeah. I think
he might be the highest owned.
I don't see the highest owned, but I think where he positions, 500 more for Kelsey and Kittle, I think more people are going to jump up to that. But I can see him being top 4 for sure. Then I think as you go down, Evan Ingram makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much Evan Ingram I will have outside of game stacks though. I do like taking shots with the new quarterback situations with both Herndon and Logan Thomas. I know Tambo, you're not on the LT talent level. I try not to get into too many talent takes myself, but I think just a new quarterback could be exactly what he needs with like the dump downs and everything that we're used to out of Kyle Allen. But Herndon, man, like I think this is an okay spot for Herndon. And, he is upticking. Like, I think before we were worried once all the wide receivers went down, why is he blocking so much? His route running is going up. Joe Flacco, new quarterback, new situation. I don't know. I don't mind taking shots here for sure in tournament aspects with the quarterback changes for both LT and Herndon. So, Tambo, how do you break down the tight ends?
The LT situation fits well into my Kyle Allen stacks because, like I said, they're just so cheap and you can play anybody, like everybody in your lineups because you just fit anyone you want and they're, you have so much money to spend. So I don't hate that aspect. And maybe the new quarterback, like I said, the check down situation would be like him and Gibson and, Scary Terry's locked up by Ramsey. That's sort of the take I would build when I'm doing those lineups. But, the Herndon one I do like a bit more. It's sort of the old matchup. So Arizona was always the one we want to go up against. Dalton Schultz, same thing. We used to want to go against the Giants all the time. I like that. Waller is just a great spot. Just to go back to Kirkwood's point at the top, I almost never play two tight ends in the same lineup. This week, I'll be playing two tight ends from the same game in the same lineup with Waller and Kelsey. And I'm not saying that's cute or anything. People will go there. Clearly, the ownership tells a story. But it's actually a spot where these are, like Kirkwood said, Waller, wide receiver 1, $5,900. It's crazy. You can use him. I know Ruggs is back and whatnot, but I think it's a good spot, and they're, they should be down. And like we said, we think the game stays a little bit more competitive. I think we all agreed on that maybe it's not going to be that kind of spread, but the total is likely real. So I think if Kansas City's scoring those points, the only way to keep up is with a guy like that. And just lastly, I'll triple down or double down, whatever you want to call it on this Kittle take. But like 140-point game was last week with Mullins. In the last 2 years, he's only had 3 20-plus point DK point games, and Kelsey has 7. Like, Kelsey is the talent, and for some reason, he's going to come in lower owned than Kittle here. And he's got the other matchup that we used to target all the time when they were the Oakland Raiders. And I know things have changed, but I'm just saying this is a really good spot for Kelsey, and I'll have way more Kelsey than Kittle this week. I'll go every way on that one. So, like I said, the Mullins thing was real. It was in 2018. It was last week. He's not there anymore. We got to see, and I still love McKinnon or Mostert or whoever wants to come in and play that game to run all over Miami.
Yeah, and maybe my love for Kittle should hinge maybe on Mostert's health too, right? If they have a full gamut of running backs where they can slow this game up,
Oh,
maybe
for
I
sure.
start selling off that game, thinking that they run the ball way too much.
And this is a tourney takes podcast. We got to have takes. Like, Kirkwood said earlier, Kittle can snap this slate up in 2 seconds. The yards after catch, he's a beast. It's nothing to do with talent in this situation. He definitely does not suck. He's one of the best in the league. I thought it was cool the other night seeing Bob Tonyan saying, roommating up with Kittle and all the stuff that was going on there, and he did his work. I love seeing stuff like this. I love Kittle as a player. This is literally just a DFS take, and you got to take some stands. And regardless of where the ownership shows up, I like Mahomes. I like that game. I like the team total. And I like, especially if the CEH ownership keeps ticking up, sticking with this passing game and knowing what I'm doing with it, feeling very good about the Kelsey versus Tyreek thing. Like, just feel really good about this spot in this game. So I'm in on that.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. With Kittle, because at least I want to be with you, because like this could be a sloppy game against Miami. Miami's defense played pretty well last week. He's, tight end variance is extremely high. We know that, right? Like always, he's coming off a 43-point performance where everyone and their mother's going to want to play, and their mother. Shout out to Siege, and at 43 fantasy point performance last week. So, it just makes sense to just go in different directions. So like you said, we know he can be phenomenal. And in like cash games or like whatever, like no problem playing but like we got to like take a stance on like a spot where we think we want to like be underweight to try to get some leverage on the field. And this is one that makes sense to me. So I like that call, Tambo. But I'm going to be all in with Evan Ingram. That's it. I've talked myself into it at this show. Just I
love it. Like I can always tell the plays that you're the most passionate about because you go into them like in detail, and then there's usually like some anger involved. Like just throw him the damn ball, let him eat.
This was levels of even higher. This was F-bomb energy that went behind it. So I mean, he's in on Evan Ingram. We're good.
Yeah.
So let's do it. So let's take it home with the stacks. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do my start us here with the Daniel Jones, and it's not sneaky by any means, but with definitely Ingram, maybe Tate or Slayton, but like Tate from an ownership perspective, I kind of like that angry coming back after that fight, not suspended. Maybe has a little chip on his shoulder this week. And just against an atrocious defense. So, and then bring it back with Zeke. I know that's plain, but I'll give one more, maybe. Man, I'm so chalky this week because I love Mahomes. Like, I can't get over this game total. I can't get over the fact that Edwards-Helaire is going to be so chalky. And like that stat that I keep going to, they have 11 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. This is a team that likes to pass and pass for touchdowns. And this is Mahomes. And Mahomes is 7,700. Like he's not like he should be higher. And so, man, it's going to be Tyreek or Kelsey for me. And like, if I want to get cute, it'll be some Sammy Watkins, but like, I'm going to go with Tyreek. That's going to be my guy because I'm going to have Ingram in every lineup. So,
who you bring it back with as a Raider?
It's gonna be Jacobs or Waller. It's so easy. Like maybe even them both. Like this is a game that you can do them both. Like like it's.
Gamble on Ruggs exposure at all?
I like some Ruggs too. We didn't talk enough about him earlier, but coming back, I think he's another guy you could just sneak into that. And again, where we said we believe this game could stay a little bit closer, right? Than what others may think. I think you can get a couple Oakland or Las Vegas guys, as you just mentioned, Kirkwood, get in there. Right? Talk about using a couple of them at the same lineup and mix and match. There's plenty of ways to go about it.
And the best part is, like, all these other rookies have kind of, gotten off already, and Ruggs hasn't. And so his price is at 4,700. Nobody's talking about him. Seems like a great spot, like, if they're going to be passing so much coming from behind.
All right, Tambo, give us the Flacco stack.
No,
give us
certainly not. The Kyle Allen stack's there for sure. We'll roll. We talked enough about that, but I mean, we're just backing up for one more second. Like Patrick Mahomes, 7,700. You talked about 6,400 on Kelsey. Mix in your $4,500 Watkins, stay off a hill because I'm using Kelsey. Go with your $4,700 Ruggs and get in your cheap version of Jacobs because it's going to stay a little closer than we think at 6,300. You've got a 5-man game stack with a massive team total, with a game that we think is going to stay a little bit closer, some uniqueness to it because it's not all of the chalk plays, and you're good to roll. And if you want to get 2 tight ends in there, get Waller in and maybe remove Jacobs because there's a bunch of other running backs that we mentioned. So I love that. The other one I like, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, but was Watson, Fuller, Cooks, James Robinson on the other side. I do like that.
Yeah, Ruggs is interesting because he's like a guy with he's got the talent to rip the big play, and that's what we're looking for, and he's cheap. And so we're looking for exposure to games with a little bit less ownership, with guys who are talented that can go for big plays, right? Like that's DFS.
And he's got the classic Q tag, right? So people will stay away from him.
All right. Are we done?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to do the Houston Jacksonville stack. My bring back would probably be DJ Chark there. But yeah, I love that game just ownership wise. What Tambo said, with the KC Oakland, those guys aren't going to be highly owned.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, if you believe the Raiders are going to keep that game, like I love stacking that up multiple different ways. So
this is going to be a big week, boys. I'm feeling it. It's, Kirkwood had the big week last week. We're going to shift it around this week. I'm ready to take down a tournament here. I think this is the week.
You know what I'm going to preach? I'm going to keep getting smaller and smaller with my quarterback pool. And that's how I'm going to build my lineups. And that's what I did last week. I narrowed it down, but I'm going to narrow it down even more. And I think that's the way to just hone in on your 5 to 6 QBs and games that you really like, and then just be all in on them.
That's basically what I do every week.
Yeah.
I don't get too deep. If I like a game, I'll stack it multiple different ways with both quarterbacks. But yeah, I'm usually pretty tight with my QB pool.
That's the ticket. I hope. All right. This has been a good show, good week. Good luck to both of you. Good luck to me. Good luck to everyone listening. This is the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast, and we'll catch you next week.